What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Babbles Nonsense podcast. Today, Meenu is back, and we are talking about a topic that hits all the way home. That ex who keeps popping back up. You know the one, just when you've moved on, healed, maybe even forgotten their birthday, and then boom, a random text message, a call, a like on your story, or a casual, hey, how you been? Like they didn't just ghost you months ago. So today, we are talking about why they come back. Is it love? Is it ego? Or is it just plain old power dynamics? In this episode, I'm sharing some of my own stories, a little unfiltered, and we're unpacking the psychology, the patterns, and how to break the cycle for good. Let's talk about it. Let's get raw, real, and maybe a little messy.
Welcome back, beautiful people, into a brand new episode in Transcendental Wellness and Babbles Nonsense. As usual, Jonna had something extremely interesting for me to talk about, which I just could not say no to. I don't know how she does that every time. It's amazing.
Well, it's for selfish reasons only. But yeah, wanted to talk about, or I asked Menu because, she's so great at giving me advice because that's her whole job. And I wanted to know like why exes kind of like circle back because that seems to be a pattern in my life, not necessarily exes or maybe someone I used to date or something like that. And I was like, can you talk about this? Because I know I have a lot of friends, girlfriends that we sit around and talk about it, and it seems to be a pattern in their lives as well. So I was just found it an interesting topic.
Oh, it is very interesting. It's happened, I would say, a few times in my life. It's happened for my clients, it's happened for my friends. And usually, whenever that happens, I see a similar theme. It's like, we feel like we've lost our power. We feel like we've lost all the work that we've done. We feel that emotional tug of war. And then because of that emotion, we think it means something when it doesn't mean that. I
Yeah.
think.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
100% agreed.
Yeah. So one of the main, like, I mean, I'm not even going to say one. There's like several reasons why they reach out, but like some of the main reasons which I wanted to like point out is like, have you heard about this concept called mirror neurons? So mirror neurons are something which, if you're close to somebody, our brains are like wired with mirror neurons, which actually pick up on the emotional states of the people that we were once close to.
Oh, really?
Yes. So, for example, my mom, I don't know how, I was like, are you psychic? And she was like, I swear I'm not. Every time I'm like feeling down, every time I'm sick, she knows.
Okay. So it's
Right?
kind of like a twin thing, like when twins know. Yeah.
Similar. So, those are all like mirror neurons. It happens with parents and their children. It sometimes even happens with best friends, which have like a very soulmate kind of a friendship. And it definitely happens with husband and wife. It happens with, ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends sometimes because of the level of connection they had
That's
before.
interesting because I have that you say that like when someone has reached out, I had been thinking about them and thinking about reaching out myself.
Yes.
And then like they were, and I'm like, that's odd. Or, or they show up in a dream or something like that.
Yes. Yes. So that's subconscious. Sure. The subconscious mind is also like playing an active role in like bringing up things from the past. But I found this like thing with mirror neurons like happen so much. And it happened so much with my mom that I was like, what is this thing? And then I was like, oh, this is mirror neurons. Okay. This makes more sense. Right. And
Yeah.
then some of the other reasons that I want to talk about is there is sometimes this like unfinished emotional ties. So whenever there is like unfinished business, like if emotional closure was never achieved, exes can remain entangled in what is called like an energetic card. So I've done this with a few of my clients, especially when they really request saying, I really want to get over this person and I don't like how I'm feeling. I don't like what this is doing to me. Like, I feel like I'm doing great, and then it comes back, and then I'm back in that cycle again. I just need to. So, we do like cord cutting rituals. We do like energetic divorce rituals, which is like, I know it sounds crazy, but it's actually like a 15-20 minute meditative process.
Mhm.
And then there's some energy releasing process that I do with them. And usually after that process, there's a huge release that they feel. So, sometimes it can be because of psychic hooks. It's almost spiritual. It's hard to explain, or even like emotional ties. It's like maybe everything that needs to be said hasn't been said. Maybe that closure that, both of us or both of you are wanting to achieve hasn't been achieved. And then because of that, there is like emotional ties.
That makes a lot of sense. And a lot of like online therapists or just therapists in general will tell you like you have to give yourself closure, like that other person's not always going to give you the closure that you need. So would you say like this meditative practice that you do is the way to energetically give yourself that closure versus going to that person and talking to them?
1000%. Because when you're going to that person and talking to them, this is the thing, you're still putting weight on the other person to make your life better. So, which means you're still saying, I can't make it better. I need you to make it better. And that's okay if that other person is logical and practical and can offer that kind of support. But usually it's not.
I was about to ask you because like I'm a very much like, and I get that not everybody's like me, and I get that I have a very intense personality. Sometimes me and you are very similar. I'm a very inquisitive. I'm a why person. Like why this, why that, and when someone doesn't give me that blunt, direct answer, it makes my mind go in circles, and then I have like 25 more questions versus just the closure that I need because for like they're just going around it, right? They're not saying what I need them to say or answering the question. Like, for example, like if I'm saying, hey, Menu, like, you want to go out Friday? And you're like, well, if this client doesn't show up at this time, then we can go out. And you're like, but you're not answering me. Like, I'm still stuck in limbo and I don't know the answer because, yes, you gave me an answer, but it wasn't even an answer to the question that I asked.
Right. And I think this is where, this is like really crazy that I'm saying this, but it's like, I think if they don't want to give you the answer, I think it's also safe to assume and understand that they don't want to. They want to have that kind of control. They want to have that. They want to have that power over you.
Yeah.
Remember, anytime when somebody doesn't give you the answer, the process that happens for the other person is they start wondering. It's almost a method to have control. It's like
Oh,
wig. They actually say be wig. It's really insane. Like these like manipulation tactics and things
but do
like
you
that.
think that someone who's doing that knows they're being manipulative and like they're using it as a strategy, or is it something that they don't even realize they're doing?
Both. It can
Okay.
be either or. It can be either or. And and I hate to say this, like this is coming up recently a lot now, and more common with men. And again, I have nothing against men, love women and men the same way, but they're coming across like spiritual predators, which
Okay.
means they're behaving in a way that you like. So they're not actually being authentic to who they are. They're talking in a way that you like, they're mirroring your behavior, they're showing up in a way that you like, but they're not actually, being authentic. So manipulation, very much exists.
Yes.
If they want to have you in their hook and they want to have that control over you, sometimes it can be very conscious. And remember, they're not going to come and tell you that. They're not going to reveal that.
I know my friends are like, because I'll be like, I'll ask someone straight out, like, why are you doing this? Or like, what? And my friends are like, why? Like, do you really think they're going to tell you their playbook? And I'm like,
Exactly.
but like, I would, I would be like, yeah, I don't like you. I like the attention you give me. I would, but and again, I know a lot of people are not like me, and I guess I just expect the same in return for someone to be just direct and honest.
Mhm.
But we all know that's why I don't like to date because I almost don't believe anyone now. Like I'm so traumatized that I'm like, just don't believe anyone.
Mm. Yeah, but that's also not, that's also like an illusion of safeguarding yourself, but it's
Yeah.
not really safe. It's like robbing you off of having certain experiences that you probably need to have or would like to have
Well, you'll
someday.
be proud because I did get back on the dating apps and I'm trying to force myself to do it. Sometimes I just can't. And I will say there was this one guy on there that like we matched or whatever, and he was like, I just want to go ahead and say up front that I'm not looking for anything serious. I just got out of a long-term relationship, but I am looking to talk to someone, like to talk to people or whatever. And he was like, so if you're interested, then that's cool. But if not, I totally understand. And I was like, you know what? Thanks for being completely honest because that's not what I'm looking for. So thank you. And
Yeah,
he's like,
that's
no problem. Nice to meet
yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's
You know?
actually, I mean, it's nice to have that because it's that level of honesty. Like I said, it's pretty refreshing.
Yeah, I was just like, wow, like you straight up were like, hey, I'm not trying to waste your time. I'm not trying to play games. I'm not trying to like, and he was like, well, if you still want to hang out and you want to be friends, I was like, no, I'm good because I tend to get attached to people. It can't be
Right.
me. Can't be me.
Right, right. No, I think that's, and honestly, kudos to you too, because I think you've done some work on yourself, which is you have this self-awareness that, this is just not my cup of tea. Because I feel like if I had met you, if you had done this like a year or 2 years ago, your people pleasing would have kicked in and you would have
Yeah.
been, oh, I'm gonna give it a shot. Like, I'm gonna see what happens. But I think you've really implemented some lessons here. So I
Yeah.
am really proud of you. So yeah.
Yeah, because part of me probably would have been like, you know what? What's the harm in meeting a new friend and hanging out? And then I end up really liking this person. And they're like, I told you from the get-go, I
Right.
didn't want a relationship. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And then I've also like noticed this, which is excess reaching out, like coming back to that. It's like and this is something I've seen for myself, like when I actually fully move on, they're feeling it's something
There's
energetic
a
happens.
radar they have.
There is a radar. Something energetic happens, and they're like, "Oh, I just wanted to like see how you were doing." I'm like, "Come on now. You can feel that I really, really don't care about you anymore." And I've like fully moved on, and so they can again, it's coming back to that energetic pull, which is hard to explain with science, but it happens when somebody's like fully closed the door and they're gone, and you sense that emotional unavailability, but energetically. So now you want to reach out because now, guess what? You don't have any control and you just want a taste of that control. Sometimes it can also be for ego reasons. Like some exes, like I've had some clients tell me crazy stories. Like they reach out just to know if they have moved on, or they reach out to know if they're still thinking about them. I'm like, what?
That's the part I guess I don't understand, like the ego check. And I've tried to do like a deep dive and like research this for this topic, but it's like maybe they once like the attention that we gave them. So then they miss that attention because maybe they're not currently getting that attention from anyone else. And so
Yeah,
it's more
absolutely.
just the attention. And that's sad to me that you would disrupt someone's peace for attention.
Oh, 1000%. But you got to think about it this way. Like when they want something, they're not thinking, is that okay? Is that selfish? Is that selfless? Like most of them, and I hate to say this, most of them are not thinking how this is going to affect the other person.
And I mean, I guess that's true because I'll be honest, I've reached out to exes too. Like when I've been bored or wanting to talk or whatever, I've reached out. But I guess in my mind, I was thinking they're a guy. They're not going to be emotionally upset about this. So maybe that's wrong of me for even doing that too, because it's the same thing. And then I'm sitting here judging the other party.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, pretty
Yeah.
sure like a lot of men, they're very emotionally in tune. I have male and female clients, and I hear this from different
Yeah.
people. So the ego part is usually like, think about it this way, Jonna. Like, it's like, yeah, even if your exes or our exes are with somebody else, we still had a certain energy. We still had a certain way of fulfilling their needs. And even if the other person is fulfilling other needs, they're not fulfilling it in a way that we are. So there is still that void, which is there.
Yeah. So I retract my statement then because I have, I guess, reached out for attention from exes, but usually they're single. I don't reach out to exes if they're with somebody. Um, but at the end of the day, I guess where it comes like from my perspective and it becomes hurtful is if that person knows that you really wanted something with them or you really were in love with them or you really cared about them and then they keep reaching out. And that's the part that I guess my brain can't understand.
Well, there is nothing to understand. I'm gonna paint it really clearly to you. That person does not care.
Okay.
That person does not care. If you verbally, like anybody listening to this, if you verbally told them not to reach out, if you verbalized it and said, this doesn't have a positive impact, this is not constructive, especially if we're not going to get together, like it's not helping or serving in any way, and they continue to reach out, they're doing it for selfish reasons. They're
Yeah.
either
Yeah.
for
Like if
ego check, like,
yeah.
like I
Yeah.
said, ego check. Oh, I just want to know if she's still thinking about me. And
Because what you're saying is that if they were reaching out because they genuinely needed you or genuinely cared about you, it would be like, hey, we need to sit down. We need to talk. I miss you. Let's reconcile. That
yeah,
would be the reason for the reach out versus reaching out and just being like, oh, my bad. I didn't
yeah.
know you still felt that way.
Yeah, and this is
Yeah.
where really like want to like pull up statistics, guys, because obviously we're talking about our experiences, but we also want to talk about facts, okay? So the reasons why exes reach out. So the cause of loneliness and boredom, that being the reason, is 30 to 40%. So you can literally, like you said, you were bored and you reached out to an ex. Like it literally happens for men. Like when they're bored, and if they're H word, horny, like they're going to be like, let me see what she's doing on a Friday night, or let me see if she's, like honestly, I'm just being honest. Like this is 30 to 40%. And then sexual interest and hookup motivation is like 25 to 30%. Emotional comfort is 20%. Guilt, believe it or not, is actually 10%,
Okay, and
right?
let's talk about that for a second. Why would someone reach out of guilt but still not want to be with you?
So they reach out again, it is to self-soothe themselves. Does that make sense? I
Because
want
they're
you to
feeling guilty for how they treated you?
exactly. It is
Okay.
like they want to make amends, but not make amends in a way that they're, oh, selflessly thinking about you. They want to feel better about themselves.
Going back to our episode of the people pleasing. So it's like, I don't want her to think of me in a negative light, him or her. I don't want them to think of me in a negative light. So I know we ended poorly. I feel guilty about that. Let me reach out and make sure we're cool.
Yep.
Okay. That
It's
makes
it's a
sense.
form of people pleasing. It's also a form of like self-soothing. But the worst part is like if you've done this and if you're doing this, like yeah, you're like self-soothing, but you're also being extremely selfish and not considering how the other person feels when you reach out. That's like super. If you really love that person, you would leave them alone.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. And then get this, genuine desire to reconnect and work things out is 10%.
Hmm. Which now going to these statistics of reconciling. So if we're saying 10% of people truly only reach out because they want to reconcile with an ex, then my statistics that I have about reconciling are like people who have on and off, like on again, off again relationships. 60% of young adults report being in an on and off relationship at least once in their life. And then
Mhm.
only 40 to 50% who try to get back together, or sorry, 40 to 50% of those people try to get back together with their ex, but only
Mhm.
less than 15% stay together.
Exactly. So it kind of matches in some way or another. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's like because when they get back together, it's almost like you don't know if it's love, you don't know if it's fear, you don't know the primary motivation behind giving this person an opportunity. It is very rarely true love. I have seen so many women, especially, and I'm very proud to say this right now because women are really evolving and changing, which is amazing. But I've seen it in my practice, which is like they don't want to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when exes reach out, they're like, if they're single, they're like, okay, you know what? Even though it was toxic, it seems very familiar. So I want to work with something that I already know rather than starting over with a stranger. So I'm going to go back to familiarity. And the problem with that is you're going back to familiarity. That is the
And
problem.
comfort. Yeah.
And comfort, and you're going back to something that is already done. An ex is an ex for a reason.
Yeah. Now, I do think that there are certain situations where if it was the wrong timing, like let's say that y'all got along, everything was great, you had a good connection, you had good chemistry, but maybe one person wasn't ready for a relationship and one person was, and you go your separate ways because of the timing, because it was just, I don't know, maybe they had to move for a job or, the timing, and then and then you don't speak for like a year or two, and then they come back, and then then they reach out because they genuinely are like, you know what, I'm back in town and I miss her and I actually really think I'm ready for a relationship. And then they're both on the same page and the timing is correct. I think that's the 10% that
Exactly.
typically work because it would have worked then
Yeah.
had the what's the word? Not the timing, but like your past, I guess, or what you're both wanting is this exact same at the time.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And then there are also situations when, believe it or not, it's not common in America, but it's common in Indian culture and some other cultures, where sometimes couples break up for their parents.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because parents didn't approve them.
Oh,
The
okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then for religious reasons, like couples break up for that. And so they would perfectly have been getting along in a relationship for 1 year or 2 years or 4 years, however long they're dating. But they were separated due to like completely external situations.
Yeah.
They decided to do that to like not create chaos in the entire family. And then for some reasons, they decide to do the work or decide to, come back and reconcile when that is like love, right? Because it's like, it's not coming from anything else. It's not coming from ego. It's not coming from loneliness. That means, okay, now we clearly have different values where we've decided not to listen to our parents
Yeah.
and we are deciding to like make this work. So again, like I said, that 10%, again, it's just 10%. So it's like very rare. But what happens, especially with women, because our limbic system, our limbic brain is like larger, right? We're more driven by emotions and we're more driven by feelings. So generally, when an ex reaches out, women tend to create stories based on the narrative that they have in their mind.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
a lot
who
of women, I think that story is typically like, oh, they reached out, they care.
exactly they care, they want to make this work,
Yeah.
they want to talk to me, they probably are miserable without me, like
Yeah.
whatever the
Yeah.
reason is. But you got to really, this is where, right? I mean, and I say this with a lot of kindness, guys, like it's like emotions and feelings are really great when it comes to, oh my God, a lion is chasing you, you're afraid, run for your life. Or, it's good for certain things like survival based, but emotions and feelings are really bad indicators for making good decisions.
Yes, they are. Trust me. I have had to practice and practice and practice when I'm in a heightened emotional state. Put the phone down. Put the
Yes,
phone down, especially
yes.
if there's alcohol involved. Put it
Oh,
down.
absolutely. Absolutely. Emotions are just, you got to think about it this way. Emotions are so, so, so temporary.
Yes.
If feelings and emotions are so temporary, why would you make a life-changing decision based on that?
Yeah. Well, yes. And like the example I gave earlier, there's probably one, maybe two people that I've dated where it was just wrong timing. Like I'm
Mhm.
not saying that that's my person or whatever. If they came back around, it would I could see myself dating them again because it was simply for the fact that we were just in two places. I was
Right.
ready to move forward with the relationship and they
Mhm.
weren't.
Right, exactly. And I've heard like stories like that too with my friends' lives. They had to separate for religious reasons. And then when they came back, they were really able to like make some things work. Like they got along great and they just had different values
Yeah.
because they just decided, oh, we're not going to care about family. But then when they came back, they were still that power couple,
Yeah.
and I've seen situations like that. So definitely 1000% there. And then get this, 10% reach out because they want to know what's happening in your life.
Well, mine can just listen to the podcast and know.
Yeah, what's happening in your life? And then, or jealousy. Like, let's see.
Jealousy.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe they see on social media that you're moving on or you're dating someone else and, things like that. And to get the details to like feed off of that energy. Like, it's just crazy.
Someone told me I need a male's perspective on this podcast, and sometimes you don't. I have had that. I've asked other, guys. It's hard when all my male friends are actually not talk like they're not toxic men. So I've tried to have my male friends on the podcast and ask them these questions, and they're like, who would do that? I'm like, y'all are not making this easy to ask y'all questions if you're like, what man does that? And I'm like, who am I dating if y'all don't do that? You know what I'm saying? So, yes, I agree with that. But sometimes I do think like having a male's perspective on what they feel, because what I can't wrap my mind around a brain, man or woman, that's like, I'm with somebody, but I'm still don't want them with somebody else. So I'm going to reach out and disrupt the peace. Like to me, that just doesn't make much logic if you have a significant other that you are with.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a sense of control. They don't like to lose that control. Do you understand? Like, because think about it this way. Like, if you are already with someone, that means it's indicating to them that they don't have that special place in your heart.
But they didn't want it.
Exactly. But it's so interesting. There's this terrible example. What do they say? It's like you don't eat your own lunch, but you don't want to share your lunch with someone. It's like,
It's true. Like I meal prep all the time, and I'm like, I don't want this.
Yeah, it's literally like that. It's
Once, I mean,
again,
people want what they can't have always. Like, and I guess that's why I have a hard time dating because it's like at the end of the day, I used to think, and I think you could probably relate, a lot of women could relate. We were fed this idea that there's a perfect relationship, there's one person you'll ever love, there's a soulmate, and that's it, right? And it's
Mhm.
this long-lasting love. I no longer believe that. I believe that you could love a lot of people, and I believe that the person that you love and loves you back is like on the same path, has the same thought process in a relationship, communicates very well because it's not going to be perfect in that situation always.
Yeah.
But if people are willing to open their mind, like for example, I'm not saying I want to open a relationship by any means. I'm just saying if someone came up to me and said, this is what I've been thinking, that person should be able to feel comfortable enough to come to me and say, hey, here's my thoughts. This is what I've been thinking. What are your thoughts? And then listen to my thoughts and then make an agreed upon decision as a couple together. Right.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's just like, I use that because it's kind of so far out there that somebody would be like, what? But too many people are afraid to communicate that because the other person might be like, excuse me? You can
Hmm.
just leave this relationship if that's what you want. But that person was trying to communicate to you before they cheated, right?
Oh, 1000%. Oh my God, girl, I hear this all the time. I hear this all the time. There is always communication in some form or another.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's verbal, sometimes it's not verbal.
Yeah.
And when the more you tend to avoid it, that's when you're in for surprises.
Right.
The red flags are always there. The doubts are always there. They always have been there. And I see like people beating themselves up by saying, "Oh, I can't believe they did this all of a sudden." Really? Like
What's it all of a
all
sudden?
of a sudden,
Yeah.
that really, it's never, never. Patterns are always repetitive.
Yeah.
It's never, never, ever all of a sudden. Never, ever all of a sudden.
But I guess where I was going with that was I feel like it's, and again, not putting men down because I obviously am not a man. We can only speak from the female's perspective. I feel like sometimes when the exes are circling back and the woman's still so emotionally attached or involved or telling themselves a story about it, that's what makes it so difficult, and it makes it hard for me to understand the thought process. Like I know that you obviously understand the thought process because you coach both men and women, and you are a coach. So you kind of
Mhm.
understand the psychology behind it. But for me, since I don't do that, like I'm not saying I don't reach out to exes, I have. But usually if I'm reaching out to an ex, it's because I still have feelings for them. I'm not just reaching out randomly for attention. It's because
Yeah.
I want attention from the person I like.
Mhm.
So I guess my brain just can't understand it.
Well, I think the easiest way to understand is you're a woman and he's a man. Remember, women are more driven by emotion. You literally said, I feel like I want, like it's
Yeah.
like you see that even the statement is like feeling like I want to do this and getting back together or, potentially rekindling things. And that's more common in women. However, for man, it's they don't operate like that. So this is what I would say to like women listening to this. If an ex reaches out, do not create a story. You are absolutely most likely wrong until you have facts. Until you have facts. Don't create a story. If your brain creates a story, tell your brain, guess what, brain? We don't have facts. We want to believe something because it makes us, what does it make us feel? Very good, right?
Yeah.
It makes
True.
us feel good. It makes us feel chosen. It makes us feel like they value us. It gives us an internal ego boost. It does all those things. But we can't decide on anything until we have real facts. So I'll always say facts over fiction, facts over fiction.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with that. So how do we, like, we know kind of when people are coming back. And we
Mhm.
know that, like, you've mentioned the ego, you've mentioned
Sense of
attention and things like
control.
that.
Yeah, wanting control, attention, sex,
Yeah. So how do we, like, we recognize that? So then how do we stand in our power with that? And then how do we break that cycle? Or like you said, until you know the facts, how do we get the facts if they're not willing to give them?
I mean, I think that itself answers the question, right? If they're not willing to give the facts, then they're like reaching out again, probably for the other reasons, which is maybe boredom, maybe sex, maybe control. Because if the person that's not willing to give the facts, it's those reasons. If a person is giving the facts, it's usually because they want to reconcile. It's usually because they're stepping in with intention.
Yeah.
Because what is facts? Facts is like giving you a statement with intention, right? So that's how you know. But stepping into the power, I mean, it honestly all boils down, and I hate to be the cliche person to say this, but it boils down to self-love.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Because someone who loves themselves and demands respect for themselves would not tolerate that
Yeah.
type of behavior because you would be like, nah.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Yeah.
if think about it this way, like it's like, and let me help you out. Maybe, maybe let me help you out. Let's say an ex is reaching out right now, and you don't know, why. I think the first ice-breaking question you need to be is like, hey, what was your motivation or your intention to reach out now? Just start there before assuming, start there before dreaming, start there before creating stories. Just start there. And then if they say, oh, I want to like reconcile, I'm talking about the 10%. If they say, I want to reconcile, I want to rekindle, I want to do this, then the next magic question that needs to be asked is, what has changed? Because we broke up for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
What has shifted and what has changed that you think that this is going to be different this time? Again, it's not that, oh, I miss you, I love you, I can't live without you. Sure, because guess what I told you about feelings? They're temporary.
Yep.
Because once they have you, maybe all those feelings will be gone,
Right.
right? Again, we got to come back to what's the fact, what actually changed.
Right.
What is the chance that it's actually going to work out the second time?
Okay.
If that's not sound enough, if that's not good enough, and if it's wishy-washy, then again, you got to go back to, do you really want to put yourself through all that all over again? And I'll talk to you about this. So I once dated a man who was super, super avoidant. Okay. Anytime I was in my power, he would be all over me. He would DM me, he would message me, he would text me, he would call me. Like he was like, oh, I really choose you. You're the one for me. Like all those like long messages. And I'm like, oh my God. And anytime I became comfortable, he was like, boom, I'm gonna,
That right there.
yeah, I'm gonna run. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. And then at first, I was like, oh, poor him. Maybe he needs to like work through this. And because, the problem with working in mental health, and, it's because it's hard for you to judge anyone. You start to have compassion for everyone. You start
Yeah.
to try to understand everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like it was like that for me. And I was trying to do that. And then I was like, damn, if this was my client, then what would I say? You know? And thankfully we were never in a relationship. We were like just in the initial stages of
Like
dating.
situationship. Yeah.
Yeah, like very initial stages of dating. And I was like, you know what? This is not healthy for my nervous system. This is like toxic for my nervous system. And this is the sad part. The women that settled for this typically had one or two parental figures that never gave them consistent stability, never gave them consistent safety, never gave them consistent love. So because they never gave that consistency, and it's familiar to your subconscious and your unconscious brain, even though you hate it, you still stick around.
Yeah. You just described me. No, I had a conversation with a friend the other day and just told him that, like, because I used to say that our story, like, I used to say that my story didn't matter. I would always be like, it doesn't matter. People's had it worse, but your story does matter because if
Yes.
people don't know your story, they can't understand why you move the way you move.
Yeah.
And so, like, I had to explain to my friend, I was like, listen, like, and I said exactly what you just said. I said, sometimes because I had to fight so hard for my parents' attention and love, I said
Mhm.
that I chase men that I'm dating to fight for that attention and that love because I think subconsciously, and I don't know this to be true or not, but you can tell me, I think
Yeah.
subconsciously, if I win them over,
Mhm.
then I wasn't unlovable. And then it didn't matter that my parents didn't do that. Because if I can
Exactly.
win them, then I won
Yes.
my parents.
Exactly. Exactly. And so it
Yeah.
is coming from a space of deep wounding. And it is also coming from a place actually of like that ego. When I say ego, it doesn't mean like a negative thing. It's coming from that fulfillment to your own ego that, oh, by the way, I can still win this.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, like when you just said, and that's a pattern I see a lot in dating. And that's something like when me and my aunt talk, I'm like, I can't stand like playing these games. I was like, I don't want to have to be so powerful, stand in my power, be the masculine energy all the time. And then once I am ready to be comfortable and fall into my feminine energy and like give that over, they then don't want me anymore.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Because
to me, that's games.
it is games. It is games. But and it's so interesting. So talking from the other, again, coming from a coach's perspective and talking from the other person's perspective, because I've actually also coached avoidance, is they are deathly afraid, because they have worthiness issues. So they're like constantly thinking, am I good enough for this person? Am I good enough for this situation? Am I good enough for myself? So they're having this push and pull because they also, get this, had a traumatic childhood.
No, right. And a lot of people, what I've heard, because obviously an anxious attachment style, I tend to chase avoidance.
Hmm.
And I follow the psychologist online, and he says that anxious attachment styles typically always match up with avoidance because avoids avoid and it triggers that anxiety and the anxious, and then you chase,
Exactly. And
and then it
also,
makes them avoid.
right. And also remember that all of this is dopamine.
Hmm.
Dopamine. It's like that winning, losing cycle, winning, and then space, and then winning, and then gaps, and then winning, and then losing. Like that whole thing creates this huge pattern of dopamine in your brain. And guess what, guys? Dopamine is addictive.
Yes,
It's
yes, yes, yes.
very, very addictive. Even though it's toxic, it still releases dopamine, which causes an addictive cycle. But once you realize that this is all just chemicals and nothing is facts, and this is where you have to really root yourself. It's just chemicals, it's not facts. It's just chemicals, it's not facts. The more you root yourself in that and you take some time and distance, then you're going to be fine. My biggest like request to you all, whether you're a man or a woman listening to this, is don't act out of feeling. Don't act out of feelings. Yes, love is a feeling, but love is also a verb and love is also a choice.
Yeah. So do you think that like if an ex is circling back and they are an avoidant, there is a possibility that they could want to reconcile, but because they're an avoidant, they
Mhm.
can't admit that to themselves or you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can. Sometimes they can. I've actually, the person that I was talking about, with the one that I dated, he knew he was avoidant. He knew. He knew what he was doing. But he couldn't control it because, get this, because he wasn't willing to change.
So they have to recognize that they have this avoidant pattern style.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I, I'm not going to say you can't do this with self-help books or do it on your own, but I really think that someone who has an anxious avoidant attachment style needs to work with someone because excuse me, was struggling with my anxious attachment style and I was running everybody away pretty much essentially. And then that's when I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. Mean you please help me. Please coach me.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, I think the self-help books are great. And, all these, like I said, like if you're self-led and you want to do that and you have your process, like do it. But at the end of the day, like when you have somebody holding you accountable, looking at your patterns, observing you closely, observing the situation closely, that's a different kind of lens that it's really nice to have. It's really nice to have that support. Plus, think about it this way. Yeah, you're probably, trying to like not spend too much money on a coach or a therapist or whatever self-help, but you're wasting a ton of time in these books. And if you're not getting results, you're wasting time and you can get time back, but you can always make money back.
Yeah, agreed. 1000%.
And then so to come back to the story with this person, I mean, I cut ties completely, like permanently blocked, permanently erased from everything. Because guess what? My dad was not avoidant. He was there for me. He was secure. He was a secure male figure in my life. So for me, an avoidant, it feels like a wreck to my nervous system. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. That
And see,
I'm
to
not.
me, it seems normal.
It seems normal. It seems
Yeah,
familiar.
yeah,
But I think the real healing comes from knowing that, okay, even though it's normal, it's familiar, it's still damaging to my spirit. It's still damaging to my goals and where I want to be. Does that
yeah,
make sense? And because we all, like, even though I don't have this particular issue, I don't, attract avoidant men, I still, have other subconscious wounds that I've healed
yeah,
through multiple times in my life, like people pleasing, especially, right?
yeah,
But I think you always can decide. If you really want to, I think you can decide.
yeah. I mean, I do too. I think you can, but you have to recognize it.
You
You have to,
1000. Oh yeah, nothing can happen. Like if you are not aware of like where you're at, you can't heal.
right.
You
And
can't
then
heal.
once you are aware, like we've said multiple times on this podcast, once you are aware, it's then a choice.
It is a choice.
Yeah.
Because that is also a choice. I'll tell you that. Because, and a lot of people don't choose that. They'll be like, yeah, I'm this way. I guess I'm this way. I don't know. I guess I'm this way. It's too late for me to change. Again, stories, 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 right? Sticking in comfort, stories. Because remember, trauma is also addictive.
Yeah, it is. And that's why you, I guess, trauma bond with people.
Trauma bond with people, and then when you've healed from trauma, remember we talked about addictive cycles. We also talked about how addiction is dopamine. So you're addicted to dopamine, which is when we use our phones, when we watch certain things, it's all like producing that chemical in our brain. And trauma, as crazy as it sounds, also causes dopamine. So when that dopamine goes away and when you're healing the trauma, it's going to be really boring.
Yeah.
It's going to feel like boredom because you're not having the spikes,
Yeah.
you know. But remember, boredom is not bad.
It's safe.
It's safe. It's
Yeah.
probably what your body needs,
Yeah.
not desires, but needs deep down.
Yeah. No, I've heard that because I know we've done podcast episodes where I've talked about like when I've dated people in the past, I was like, this is boring. And you were like, they were probably the right one for you because they weren't like making me feel crazy all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. This is some good stuff. I feel like a lot of people need to hear this.
So, as far as like breaking the cycle for good, so like some talking points or like some questions that I had was like some things that you've told me in our sessions and things that I want to bring up, and like maybe you can elaborate on them for us, is that you've told me you teach people how to treat you. So if
Hmm.
you're continuing to allow this person to circle in your life and you take them back, take them back, take them back when there is no serious. Now, if like you said, if they were serious to reconcile, there would be a deep conversation, and you wouldn't have questions. You
Hmm.
you would have your answers. So, would you say like that is that is part of the problem? Like I guess I'm saying I would be part of the problem if I continue to allow, because then that person is like, I don't respect her. She doesn't respect herself.
No, absolutely. Oh my God. And I hate to say this, and it kind of sucks when I say this, but it's true. But absence and scarcity really creates fondness. Absence and scarcity really creates that respect. I have seen the way people treat me when I have fully cut them out, and they come out as a different person. The way they treat me is completely different.
Yeah.
When I've like fully cut them out and I've fully like stepped into my power and respect myself, the way they treat me is very different. And I think this is where I'm not saying you, but people that allow this have to take massive responsibility because you're enabling that too. You're enabling that behavior when you're picking up that phone call. You're enabling that behavior when you're responding to that text. You're enabling that behavior constantly.
Yeah, I have a friend and we had a conversation about this. I was like, we can sit here and blame the other person all day long, but at the end of the day, we do have to take responsibility in our feelings. So, for example, if I'm continuing to let someone circle back in my life and I'm continuing to be the one crying and upset, I have to also take responsibility. Sure, should they be respectful and not do that? Sure, they should, but that doesn't mean I can control them. I can control me though. And if I don't want to continue to feel that way, then stop it.
Yeah, then just really, I'm telling you, cold turkey. Like just cut them off. Cold turkey. Just stop it. Go no contact. There's power in no contact. Like it's brutal. It's very hard, but
And
there's
I
a lot of power in that.
And sometimes I think, like, we see people addicted to alcohol, we see people addicted to drugs, and we will look at someone, and I'm not saying judge them, but in our brains may go, I don't understand that. But at the end of the day, it's no different than this toxic cycle right here because someone would look at us and go, what the hell? Like, why are you continuing to play in this loop?
Yeah, 1000%. I'll give you an example of things like this, and then things like eating, like it's sugar addiction, and
Yeah.
then caffeine addiction, drugs, alcohol. Sure, drugs and alcohol are more like extreme, but there's so many addictive patterns that we all have, which we minimize, thinking, oh, it's not that bad. And then we secretly judge the other people that are addicted to drugs and stuff. But sorry, you're also in an addictive loop.
Yep. Right. Now, I know sometimes it's because we lose trust in ourselves. Like we feel like we can't do that. So, how could someone, like if they're listening to this, build trust in themselves again after letting someone back in repeatedly so that they could be like, I trust myself to let this go?
You know, okay. This is going to be hard, but the self-trust is only going to come when you do the right thing. The self-trust is not going to come from a feeling. Because some people, what they're doing is they're desperately waiting for the feeling.
Yeah.
They're waiting to feel empowered. They're waiting to feel confident. They're waiting to feel like, fuck them, I'm good. They're waiting to feel that, that surge of ego and that surge of power. But the worst part about it is you're going to keep waiting because
Yeah.
until you take the action, you're not going to feel the feeling in these cases. I'll give you an example. You can read about driving a car, you can watch videos about driving a car, but until you drive a car, you're not going to feel confident that you can drive a car.
Right. Right.
Until you do the action, until you take the step, which is cutting them off, which is not responding to that energy, until you do that, you're never, ever going to get confident.
That when you said that, that just literally was like, oh, that makes so much sense because in nurse practitioner school, like we had to learn to suture, right? So I sutured on a pig first, and it was
Mm-hmm.
very scary. And the
Mm-hmm.
skin's not the same as a human skin, and obviously the pig was dead. And
Mm-hmm.
so then when I sutured for the first time, I was like very, very nervous. And then once I did it over and over and over again, I was like, oh, this is easy.
Exactly. And everything is a muscle. Think about it this way. Maybe self-respect is not a muscle that you grew up with or something that you cultivated in your way, but I'm telling you, it can be developed anytime. It's like literally going to the gym and suddenly working out new muscle groups. It's gonna pain, it's gonna hurt like crazy. But you don't stop that. That's when the work starts. You're just starting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a
I
lot
love
of
that.
people, I see a lot of people, make terrible decisions based on feelings. Oh, I didn't feel like doing this. So I wasn't drawn to doing
I
this.
feel good in the moment.
Yeah. Oh, like I said, feelings are the worst, guys. I mean, it's like, yeah, if you're scared and you want to run away from a lion, sure, it's useful. But if there is a survival-based situation, it's useful. But it's very useless. And most of the times, it's very useless.
Yeah, no, I agree. How would you tell someone, like, how could they distinguish true closure, like from that person, from self-abandonment masked as quote unquote being the bigger person? Like, I'm just doing this to be the bigger person. Like, I guess I'm like, how do you truly know that it's closure versus I'm abandoning the situation? I'm walking away from something that I don't know that could have been real, could have been great.
Mm. And this is really tricky. I feel like even in the question there is like unresolved things, right? It's like, oh, how do I know if I'm not abandoning them? Or how do I know if I have? Okay, the way you know, first of all, let me talk about closure. The way you know you have closure is there is a level of indifference.
Okay.
There's no hate because remember, the opposite of love is not hate.
Yes.
Opposite of love is indifference.
Yes.
A lot of people think the opposite of love is hate. And they're
No, because
like, I
hate's still
hate
a strong emotion.
exactly. I hate him. I don't want to talk. Like all that is sure. Your friends are probably like, fuck him. You hate him. That's great. Fueling the ego. But when you hate someone, they're actually more in your mind than when you love someone.
You're right. You're right because you're sitting there constantly obsessing, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So the closure, the way you know you have closure is you're indifferent. You don't hate them, you don't love them. And I'm somebody like with my exes, like I'm somebody that's like, I always want you to eat, but not in my table. So I wish you well, even if you've been toxic, even if you've caused me pain, I still wish you well because that's who I am. I'm not saying everybody has to be like that. I still wish you well, but apart from that, there's nothing there. It's like very indifferent
yeah,
sense. And
yeah.
that's how I know, oh yeah, it's done. It's
No,
it's
that
like
makes sense.
yeah. And then the other part of the question is like, are you abandoning them? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It depends on where the relationship ended, how the relationship ended. Did you abandon them to protect yourself? Then I don't even think that then that's abandonment. Then that's self-protection. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? But I will say this, guys, like I think what you're meaning to ask is like probably not doing the work and cutting it off just
Yeah,
to like run away. And
yeah,
that again is also going to bite you later because you're not doing the inner work. It's like, and the inner work, and if you ask me, how does the inner work look like? Okay, which part of me said yes to this person? Which part of me that needed healing that I didn't give to myself that that person gave,
Yes.
right? Maybe you don't see yourself that much. And this person, whenever you were with them, they really saw you for who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, what does that indicate? That indicates that maybe you need to see yourself more. You need to love yourself more. You need to give whatever that person gave you. You need to start identifying what is it? Why am I addicted to this person? What did they give me that I'm currently not giving to myself? And when you start giving that to yourself, you're going to notice, oh, I don't need them to give it to me.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense because you're chasing that feeling.
You're chasing the feeling. You're never, again, guys, you're never chasing the
The
man,
person,
the
yeah.
woman. You're chasing the feeling.
Right.
The
And
chase.
it's so funny that when we talked about doing this podcast, I had something come up on Instagram that I saw that like really resonated that kind of um correlated with this podcast, and it said they are not rejecting you, they're rejecting the person they have to become to be with you.
1000%.
And they
1000.
don't, yeah. And like if the person doesn't want to do the work to change to be with you, then they don't want to be with you.
Yeah, literally with this person that I was talking to you about earlier, like I kind of indirectly told him like, dude, you're you're too toxic for me. Sorry, like I'm too secure for you. Like just, no, I can't. I can't do that. It's so that's a very, yeah, they don't have the capacity to handle it. They don't
I
have the
think sometimes that people can just sniff out the insecurities in people and they're like, oh, yeah, I got this one.
Oh, easily, 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 easily.
Yeah.
Because like the things that you talk about too much, sometimes I feel like when people talk too much, they just give away a lot. They
Yeah,
just,
I'm bad about that. Like, I think I can't remember if it was you or my aunt who told me, like, when I would go on a first date because I was so nervous, I just talked a lot. And I'm
Mm,
such an honest and blunt person. If someone asked me a question, I would just tell them everything. And someone was like, sometimes you're giving the playbook away. You're
yeah,
telling them how to play you,
play
what you,
you. What
because if
buttons
you,
to push, what takes you, like what makes you vulnerable, what gets
yeah.
you at.
And like if you talk about your past relationships a lot and like you're like, yeah, I really hated this, then they
Mhm.
try everything in the beginning to do opposite of what you hated so that you're like, oh my gosh, they're opposite of this guy, but then they're really actually the same. And it's like the bait and switch.
Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like
Hmm.
I've seen it happen time and time and time and time. And then I also want to like really like quickly like touch on limerence. And I think we talked briefly touched on it when we were texting. So limerence is actually this feeling which feels like love. It's almost very tricky, but it's not love. It's almost like it's a trauma response.
Okay.
So the person is like giving you the attention and the validation. You think that, oh, this is love. This is how love feels like. But then it's kind of an addictive thing. So how do you know if it's limerence or love? You know it because in love, you actually feel secure. You're
And
not you're not obsessing about that person. You're
when
not.
I looked it up because I'd never heard of this. So like so the act like when I looked it up, like here's to know like limerence, they call it obsessive infatuation. So intense emotional highs and lows,
Mhm.
obsessive thinking about the person,
Mhm.
fantasizing more than experiencing reality,
Mhm.
focusing on what could be, not what is. Your
Exactly.
self-worth is tied to their attention or validation, craving signs they feel the same, anxiety when there's distance or silence. It's often one sided or ambiguous, fueled by
Mhm.
uncertainty, rejection, or lack of closure, can feel addictive or out of control. You're in love with the potential, not the
Yeah.
person.
Always. Limerence is always so, 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 so tricky. And
Yeah, it is tricky.
I've seen people confuse limerence and love so many times.
When then they say like love is calm, stable, secure, grows through time, it's not intense, shared
Yeah,
commitment, effort, and vulnerability,
right.
acceptance of flows and real life incompatibility, mutual care, communication, and consistency. You
Mhm.
feel your full self around them. You can be your full self around them. No performance or guessing, no games. You're
Yeah.
seen, chosen, and respected. It
Mhm.
doesn't consume you, it supports you. It's peaceful, not chaotic. Love builds safety. It does not provoke anxiety.
1000%. And you're also not constantly questioning, how do they feel about me? That happens with limerence a lot. Whenever you're in limerence, you're
And
like,
I think I'm now that
how do
you've
they
told
feel
me this,
about
I'm like, I think maybe I haven't ever been in love. Maybe it's all been limerence.
me? That's why I'm talking about this because a lot of us haven't really, we think it was love, but it's actually limerence.
Yeah. When you told me that, because I was like, you were like, have you ever heard of this? I was like, no. And I looked it up. I was like, Well, I'll be damned. I was like, have I ever
Yeah, yeah, probably not yet.
been in love? Yeah.
Who
Who
knows?
knows? We don't know.
Anytime that anxious loop is there, it's never, I'm telling you guys, like love feels good and safe. It feels good. You're not wondering, you're not overthinking, you're
You don't
not
have to yeah, you don't have to worry if I do this, are they going to leave? If I say this, are they going to get upset? Are they going to, yeah. I've been in a lot of relationships where it's like because I do like to communicate and then like I'm scared sometimes to say the things that are on my mind because I'm like, how are they going to respond? Are they going to leave? Are they going to get mad? You
Mhm.
know?
Mhm. And then let me tell you this before we wrap up or with more questions. Limerence is actually more common in affairs.
Oh,
So
really?
yes, and I'll tell you why. The reason is because maybe they're not getting along with their husband, and then there's this other guy who's like giving them the attention and the validation. What limerence also makes you do is it makes you villainize your husband more. And I'm not saying your husband is like partner is perfect or whatever, but because there's this like intense feelings with this other person, unconsciously you start putting them on a pedestal. And then you're like, oh, my husband doesn't do this, like he doesn't do. But then get this, get this. This person that you're infatuating over, that person is not your husband. They're not sharing your bills. They're not, sharing the room. They're not in the messy house with you. They're not around you when you have a tantrum or when you're angry or when you're sad.
Right.
So that's how you know what's limerence and love, because with limerence, you haven't experienced all of it, but you think it's love. But with love, you've gone through the thick and thin of the whole situation. You've been through all of it, and you still have that feeling. You still feel that security. With limerence, you're only fantasizing. And how to check if you're on limerence? Think about it. Have you had a bunch of conflicts with this person? How do they handle these conflicts? Are they running from these conflicts? If you've, and I always say this like to my clients that are like in the beginning process of dating, starting to date, and they're like, oh my God, this guy or this woman is fantastic. Da, 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 da. I'll be like, wait until you disagree on a few things. Just wait, you know?
Yeah. And see how the communication goes.
Because how a person handles conflict is going to determine everything. It is not how they handle the good times. How are they lovable when we're happy? Are they showing up when everything is smooth? That speaks nothing. That says
Right.
nothing. But how are they when there is a disagreement? When you're saying, no, I don't agree with you. I think you hurt my feelings. How are they handling it?
If they don't care that they hurt your feelings, they walk out the door, they run away and say, you know what?
Mhm,
Bye. Because
mhm,
you said something I don't like. I'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
mhm, mhm. Exactly. And so that's how you know if it's limerence or infatuation or love.
Yeah.
Like if it's love, if it's that intentions with love, then it will stand through a lot of things.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So, to wrap this up, I do want to say, like, if someone is circling back, guy or girl, ex or whatever, just remember, you are not hard to love. You are just or you are just easy to manipulate.
Yes, you're easy to
Um,
manipulate, and also like the more you're allowing it, and the more you allow it, the more you're, obviously like making them think that okay, this is an easy target. Okay, she's allowing it. So if she's allowing it, then I can keep doing the same thing. Remember, like loving somebody and respecting somebody is different. Like that person, even with loving intentions, if they reach out to you, they may still not respect you because you continually encourage that behavior.
yeah. No, yeah. And guys, we say this like we understand, like we've been in this situation. It's not
Yes.
as easy as us sitting here saying, "Oh, just don't
Not,
allow it."
not,
Just
it's not,
like
it's
trust
not.
me, I've been there.
Yep.
It's not that easy because when you feel like you love this person and
Mhm.
you don't know, like you love them, but maybe they don't reciprocate, it is
Mhm.
hard to close that door and close that chapter.
It is because you're still living in that potential and you're still having that dream version in your head, thinking, oh, what if he changes this time? Or what if she's different this time? And maybe I can give this a shot. Again, facts over fiction, guys. Facts over fiction, facts over emotions, facts over stories.
Agreed. Thank you so much for always doing these episodes with me. And if anyone is out there and they're a male perspective and want to jump on a podcast with me and Menu, we invite it. We welcome it. We don't want anyone to think that we're just trying to come from the female perspective, but unfortunately, guys, we're females and that's how our brain operates.
Yes, but also to give you another layer of like comfort is that I do have a lot of male clients.
Yes.
I do coach a lot of males and they go through something similar. But and I tell you this, the advice is the same for both genders. The
Right.
advice never changes. The
Right.
advice never changes.
No, I agree. I just, when someone reaches out to you and says you need a male perspective on there, I welcome it. It's not that I'm not welcoming it.
Oh yeah, we welcome all the perspectives. So thank you so much for doing this. I feel like I think with the tensions that's going on in dating and relationships between men and women, I think this is really needed right now. So I'm really glad you always pick the best topic. So I'm super grateful.
Well, thanks to my life and the examples in it. All right,
Yeah.
guys, until next time.
Until
Bye.
bye bye.